Everyone, it's Steve Barrett here, Editor-in-Chief of PRWeek. We're about to record our weekly podcast, as usual. Welcome. If you're watching, please engage with the feed, and if you've got any comments or questions, type them below. Keep it nice, keep it friendly, and yeah, we've got a great show ahead of us. We've got Joe Assad from Kovert Creative. Really looking forward to chatting to Joe, and as usual, we've got Frank Washkuch as our co-presenter and talking about the news. Welcome, Joe. Welcome, Frank. And yeah, we're just about to get going. Hello and welcome to the PRWeek, PRWeek's regular weekly roundup of everything that matters in the worlds of PR and communications. My name's Steve Barrett. I'm the Editor-in-Chief of PRWeek, going to guide you gently through the next 20, 25, maybe 30 minutes. Let's see. And we've got a great guest this week. We've got Joe Assad from Kovert Creative, co-CEO. Joe, welcome to the show. Great to have you here.
Thanks for having me. Looking forward to it.
Really interesting agency, so I'm looking forward to digging into that and finding out the model, and really came to our attention with your Cadillac work, but obviously got great heritage there. And we got Frank Washkuch, our news director, as usual. How are you doing, Frank?
I'm well. How are you, Steve?
It's been a busy week, hasn't it?
It's been a very busy week.
Saturday night.
And weekend, yeah.
Screwed up my plans for sure when Sir Martin decided to resign there at 5 o'clock US, but that was an interesting time to leak the story out, wasn't it, after all the media had gone to bed in the UK. But so we'll chat about that. We'll also chat about Marion Saltzman. She's got some people over here might not be aware of it, but it's very famous in the UK. They've decided to literally go dark on social and come off all platforms. So we'll talk about that as a strategy. And we've got Omnicom and Publicis is Q1 results. So a busy show ahead. Frank, I just wanted to say, you know, we terrible story this week on Southwest Airlines.
Yeah.
And someone died on the plane, and it turns out that she was a PR person for Wells Fargo. So our thoughts are very much with her family and everyone at Wells Fargo. It was a really tragic situation.
Yes, absolutely. It was just about as bad of an accident on an airplane as you could imagine. Again, that was Jennifer Rorden, who was she was a community manager at Wells Fargo, and they are definitely mourning her death this week. So
she's very well known and
yes.
very well liked person, and our thoughts are with everyone at Wells Fargo. A horrible situation, and our thoughts with them. So. Joe, let's get into talking about Kovert. As I said, you sort of came onto PRWeek's radar a lot when you won Cadillac, which was amazing win, by the way. Congratulations on that. That was a whole year of sort of GM pitches, and no one was picking Kovert for the Cadillac business.
But sure.
So tell us, what's the special sauce with Kovert? Because you have a very distinct offer, and what was it about that Cadillac was attracted to?
Yeah, I think for us, we have this model where we kind of merge, talent and brands. On the talent side, we represent some of the biggest comedians in the world, from Tiffany Haddish and Jimmy Kimmel and Amy Poehler and on and on. And, when we went to launch the company, my partner Louis and Kay and I, we were looking to kind of do it with a little bit more of an established way. We didn't want two guys in coffee shops trying to figure it out. So we knew we had a lot of our talent clients that we were going to come with us, and we pitched this to.
And you guys used to work at PMK.
We were at PMK.
Yeah. In LA.
And we got WME to invest in us. And one of the conversations we had with Ari Emanuel when we were kind of going through this process was we want to incubate, talent and brands on a smaller scale. The bigger companies, including PMK, including WME, kind of talk about this as something they can bring to the brand table. But the one-on-one relationship that Louis and I have was a way for us to really kind of cut to the chase very quickly. We had a lot of trust with each other. So a lot of the brand work I did for Audi and for others at PMK, I was doing directly with Louis anyway. And so we're able to kind of bring that to life. We did a spot for Method last year with Tiffany Haddish, and we pushed it out. We created it, we wrote it, and then we pushed it out on the PR side. So we're able to kind of bring all these things together and do it in a way where everybody kind of wins. And so for us, it's very important where we kind of do the brand work, we do the talent work, but we also kind of ground everything in the creative space. We've had a lot of success with digital content, and hopefully we'll kind of continue with that. And we like to try to also kind of diversify and do things a little differently. We just took an equity stake in a soccer publication last year.
Yeah, I saw that. Howler Media?
Howler Media, yeah. And for us, it's a way to kind of do some creative things without a client, we have an idea, we want to do it, we kind of go for it. As well as cultivating an audience and growing the audience and doing all those things that can potentially pay dividends for our brand or talent clients as well. So trying to continually look at things differently. There's so many agencies. Every media platform has an agency offering, so you have to kind of look at things and try to be as creative as you can in ways that make sense and not get too far outside, or over our skis, so to speak.
Yeah, so you had the auto heritage with working with Audi. What do you think what it was particularly that Cadillac saw, and what was it they wanted you to do for them?
I think it was, look, we put a team together that had automotive experience. We were really aligned with what they needed, and I think we were able to kind of help them see themselves in us. So at the time, Cadillac had just moved to New York after being in Detroit for their entire history of their company. So they were looking at this as like this entrepreneurial arm of GM, where they could be this startup and have the big mothership behind them when they needed it. And I actually used one of the quotes that the president had made, and I put it up on the screen. I'm like, this is how we talk about Kovert. We are this startup. We are this entrepreneurial, kind of get things done. But we have WME behind us, and we need to tap into the mothership. We can do it. There's a lot of parallels here. It didn't hurt that we had some history with some of the particulars involved. Some of the executives.
Joe Jacuzzi. Was at Audi, wasn't he?
He's a GM guy, and Andrew Lippman and Johan Denissen was the president. So we had some experience with some people. So I think that definitely provided some comfort. And then I think we were able to kind of show a little bit of them to in ourselves, which I think was helpful.
Sure.
And our team was crafted to do that work.
Yeah.
One of the things we did when we launched was we were all in on the brand side. We launched in January. We started pitching the business. Didn't get awarded till May. We consciously weren't signing other business because we knew we were going to have to staff up. We knew we weren't going to take time to get it together. We wanted to be day one ready to go. So we waited. The company was going to be two different things. If we won the Cadillac business, we were on the trajectory we're currently on. If we didn't, we were going to have to be something else very quickly. But we didn't want to kind of muddy the water by picking up projects here and there and then having a problem if the business landed. So we were all in.
Was that an RFP, because you were kind of up against a lot of PR firms, essentially.
Yep.
Was that an RFP where you actually sort of fashioned it and said to the client, look, this is the way we think it should be done? Or did you just pretty much stick to the RFP and give your best efforts?
We did both. Look, we're not going to be able to go up against the Fleischmans of the world as a head-to-head kind of global PR agency, but we show that we can do that work. We can do the brand work. We do the crisis work. We can kind of do the nuts and bolts that's required. But then here's this other layer that we can kind of bring to the table, and here's how we can approach it so that it's different. And that was, I think, a big point for us.
Now, as a startup, winning a client like that is fantastic, obviously, but it can be a bit daunting because you really have got to scale up quickly. How did you do that, and how did that process sort of play out?
I think for us, for that because it was so linear, we went from I'm from 10 years of leading the Audi business to jumping right in on Cadillac. It made it a lot easier. We had a network. We knew people that we could kind of draw from. And frankly, there was a lot of parallels to where Audi was now 12 years ago to where Cadillac is today. Products are getting better. People are kind of looking for the new challenger in the space. Audi at the time was fifth in the luxury market, and then has kind of pushed up into the second place of wherever they are now. So there were a lot of parallels. So being able to draw on that was really, really important. It wasn't like we got this big pharma client and we had to kind of figure it out on the fly.
Yeah.
We kind of had the blueprint, and we had kind of people that we knew we could tap into and kind of bring onto staff really quickly.
To be able to scale up.
Yeah.
And of course, you now have a new president to work with. So
24 hours in,
everything changes.
Everything changes. He's got to be ready for that. We got named mid-size agency of the year on Monday, and then the president of Cadillac went away on Tuesday. So every day is a different challenge. So we're just going to take it as it comes.
Did you say?
Shorty Awards.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That was an interesting awards night, but as I understand it,
well,
one of your talents.
We represent Adam Pally. We're on all sides of the fence on these things.
So yeah, that talking of going dark on social, that one went dark in live
yes, it
format.
Did.
Yeah, that was.
Yes,
I'm not even sure the stream is still live, but that was.
I say, Universal Music took it down. Somebody took it down. It went away, but it was very Andy Kaufman-esque to me.
It was. Yeah. I mean, do you mind me asking about that? Because obviously Lewis represented Louis C.K. So I mean, when you have talent, things are going to happen, aren't they? That's what talent is creative, but it can be unpredictable. So how do you, as a talent agency, how do you approach it? How do you deal with that?
I mean, for us, it's, within reason, it's kind of supporting people, who they are. Obviously, when Louis C.K. situation happens, that's where you have to take a different tack once things come to light. The Adam Pally thing for us is that's Adam being Adam. And, we're fine with that. Hopefully the shorty people aren't, they're past that now. And the reality is, a lot of people are talking about it.
Well, that's true.
There is some upside to it. And, we're talking about it now a week later. So, for that, it's kind of, what you're getting. And each one's different. We represent Tracy Morgan. You don't know what you're going to get, but that's the charm. And so for us, it's, everyone overuses authenticity, but there is an element of that we're there to support and kind of channel, and that's where, from the brand side too, depending on what your threshold for risk is, we can have these conversations with you. You think you want person A, but you may not have the risk capacity for person A and what they bring to the table. And frankly, you want that person, you're not going to script them. Me writing something for Tiffany Haddish doesn't make any sense. She's far funnier than I am. We can help kind of put the guardrails on and kind of help put it in position to succeed, but you want them to be them.
Yeah. Is it a pure coincidence that Louis K. is representing Louis
Purely,
C.K.?
it all worked out fine until things went pretty bad.
So talk to me about, we hear new influence, and influencers are a big thing now.
Yeah.
Where are the lines between talent and influencers? And there's a big crossover. Sometimes talent are influencers as well. So for clients, it's been difficult to assess. How much should I pay for an influencer?
Yeah.
It's probably more established with an established celebrity. There's people have been doing that for years, but really with influencers, that they don't know, and some of the numbers you hear, Kardashians or whatever. But even way down, all the way down. What's your views on that whole area of branding and brands working with them?
I think there's inherent value to a lot of it, and I think there's a lot of waste that goes along with it too. I think it's just really important to be extremely discerning in how you approach it. What are you looking to get out of it? I don't think it's necessarily right for every brand to kind of take a cookie cutter approach. And I think that the notion that the individual influencer who may not have a huge audience but has a lot of credibility in the space is going to be as valuable as somebody who may have an enormous audience but a very small fraction cares about what your product is or what you're talking about. So I think you really can't look at it as being all the same, and I have to do an influencer program just because everyone else is doing it. I think, like anything else, don't get swept up in the flavor of the moment and figure out what the right tactic to take is for what you're trying to accomplish. And it may be different things at different times, and that's fine too. Yes. We used to call them people with a platform, which, you may have 1,000 followers, but you're always talking about, yoga or whatever it may be. That's going to be beneficial if you're selling yoga mats. You don't need Tracy Morgan, who has a huge audience, but how many of his followers care about what you're talking about? Sure. And now you're paying a premium for that audience.
And the other area that's been a massive growth is brand content. We launched the Brand Film Festival 2 years ago. We're about to do the third one in 2 weeks in New York, Paley Center. Get your tickets. Still a few left. But branded content as well is something that's evolved, and maybe some brands tried it and maybe they found it difficult to measure the impact, etc., etc. Where do you think we're at with that, especially with brand films, with your heritage? Yeah. Are we learning how to make films that really add value for brands and really move the dial? I
think we know how to do that. I think the challenging part is the way the platforms have all walled themselves off. When we made Barely Legal Pawn, 4 years ago, and it was one of the biggest viral brand videos ever made. If we made that now, no one would see it unless we paid. We didn't put $1 into distribution. There was no paid support whatsoever. It was 100% organic, and it got 10, 11 million views. You wouldn't get that now. At all, because it's so difficult to reach an audience because of the way Facebook and others have kind of set themselves up. And so that to me is the little bit of a disappointment in terms of kind of how it's all operating. But we tend to look at most of these things as we're making technically an ad, but we want to make it in a way that you want to share it. So that's always how we look at it, and what I think our a little bit of our differentiator is. So we still can drive a lot of organic coverage of it, but translating to views has gotten a lot more difficult, and you see huge viewership numbers, and it's all paid. And then you question how many people have actually watched all the way through versus the autoplay and all the other stuff that goes on. So to me, that's the biggest challenge of it at this point.
So would you still make a film like that and still see it as an effective way to get messages over? You just have to understand better how to buy the media behind it.
Yeah, I think if a brand wants to do it and doesn't want to put paid against it, I might caution them against it. If you're, for us, like years ago, you might spend $500,000 on an event and try to get someone to come and get some coverage, or so you can look at it that way. And you're going to get the requisite coverage to go along with it if it's good and you have the right people and all the variables. But if you're looking for straight viewership numbers and you're not putting paid behind it, I would caution you against spending that money.
Fascinating stuff. Thank you, Joe. Let's get into some news stories this week. Been a crazy busy week, starting on Saturday evening. Sir Martin Sorrell, he resigned. I guess that wasn't the biggest surprise in the world. The timing was a little odd in that we were waiting for a board meeting on the Monday, weren't we? So talk us through that and what's happened since.
I would say it was still a little surprising he stepped down Saturday night when he did, just because, his history is he had so many fights with the board over the years, over, his pay packages and other things, that I think a lot of people were surprised that he stepped down as quickly as he did. Anyway, so Martin Sorrell stepped down as CEO of WPP on Saturday night. He's been replaced by two co-COOs as the company searches for a full-time replacement. He stepped down after a company investigation into allegations about personal behavior and allegations about misuse of company funds, which the company stresses were non-material to its business.
That's the curious part of all this, isn't it? I mean, obviously they've made a deal not to talk about it, and there's non-disclosure, etc., etc. And Martin's obviously got some deal, and he doesn't have a non-compete either, so he could actually go and set up an agency tomorrow if he wanted to compete. But that's the curious thing, and whether those revelations are going to come out is going to really impact his legacy, isn't it? There's been a lot of chat about his legacy this week, but if something comes out which is incredibly negative, then all those hagiographies are going to be slightly redundant.
Yeah, so let me ask you, as somebody who's more of a veteran of that world, are you not surprised that this has not leaked out yet, given how many tabloids there are in London and how many reporters there, just specifically there, are looking and sniffing around this story?
Yeah, I mean, I think the tabloids, when it comes to business, they're not maybe as connected, and the business press, it's a little bit like the sports press, isn't it? There's always a slightly matey relationship between the journalists and the protagonists, and it's a sort of a quid pro quo whereby you might know quite a lot of things that you don't write about. In this one, I don't think people do know about it in the media. I mean, there's plenty of gossip going around.
As a public company, isn't it almost surely going to have to come out?
Well, there's one MP actually in the UK who is calling for it to come out, and there's a thing called parliamentary privilege in the UK whereby you can say something in Parliament and you can't be sued. So he's even threatening to say that. You've got to think that it will come out these days, but one thing you know about Sir Martin is he's quite litigious. So over the years, any agency that's gone up against him will know that. So I think you've got to be very, very careful about throwing around allegations.
And I think most places have been. I can only think of the New Yorker article about him stepping down that has really had a forecast of doom of what's going to happen next.
It doesn't really add up that it was not material and it had no impact on the company.
Right.
Well, why were you suspended then? So it doesn't quite add up. And
other people have raised this question of when you have a company that big, what is non-material? Is it tens of millions of dollars? Is it $500,000? What is it?
Yeah, and the obviously with Martin Sorrell is a unique individual. He built that company from nothing. So he has always kind of, even it's been public for a long time, but he's still sort of maintained a little bit of that personal fiefdom, which I think is one of the reasons why there are people in WPP who were out for him, and potentially members of the board, and there are upsides and downsides to him going, I think, for WPP. He, as a marketer, there aren't many people out there who advocate for our industry, if you like, who are listened to by the financial community, the investment community. You don't really hear John Wren at Omnicom out there much, Michael Roth at IPG. Even Maurice Levy, who was an extrovert, was not really the sort of person who was out there advocating for our industry. And I think Martin Sorrell, love him or hate him, and a lot of people on both sides of that, he was. And he was always good for us. He would always respond. He would give us time, and he was a proponent of our industry. And we need more of that, I think, because people, the default setting for anyone is that, well, why are they wasting money on advertising? You know, why is the government spending all this money on drink driving campaigns? Well, because it cuts drink driving and it cuts deaths, you know. And when they stop the advertising, you notice that deaths through drink driving go up. So I think we need proponents in our industry, and we need more people like Sir Martin out there. Where, you know, ignore any other things about him. I think we will miss that sort of advocate for our industry. You know?
Yeah, it's hard to, and no disrespect to either of them, but it's hard to see, you know, Mark Reed, for instance, having that same role, coming on CNBC all the time, and really, you know, talking things up and being that witty. You know,
hard to see anyone.
Yeah,
he was an obsessive. I mean, we would email him at any time of the day, and you would pretty much get a reply.
Right.
And obviously, people would have jokes, like even the executives.
I would never joke about anybody I cover. And
but there was one in one of the articles, I think it was on Campaign. There's some great coverage, by the way.
Yeah, there really has
been.
been.
Our sister title, the advertising title. John Tiley is a journalist who's been covering the advertising space for like 35 years, and he wrote a fantastic piece with some, you know, Sir Martin was not a creative, you know. He was and when David Ogilvy first met him, you know, he called him an odious little shit. That's what he called him. But when he got to know him, he actually did learn. He did come to respect him, and Martin Sorrell looked after David in the latter days of his life. So he wasn't a creative, but he did have a passion for the business, and he wasn't to everyone's cup of tea. You had to be prepared to, you know, get a flea in the ear. If you asked what he considered a stupid question, we know that on PRWeek.
Sure.
Don't we? He told me off last summer when I
think I've heard that
him,
one before myself.
He told me off for not having a shave in the morning, and I'm like, okay, you're wearing your shorty shorts at Cannes, you know. I'm not going to mention them, but he was right. I probably should have had a shave, you know. But I liked that banter and back and forth, and you could feel the passion for the industry, you know, that came through. So
I would also add to that if one reason why he got the coverage he got over the years is that I think journalists in general like to cover somebody like that is, you know, brilliant and obsessive and maybe a little bit eccentric and really, you know, has some unique qualities. You know, I think a lot of executives just kind of stand behind the wall and don't say a lot, and he was different than that.
Joe, what do you think in terms of advocating for our industry? Because, you know, it's difficult to... We've done a thing where we get people to ask their parents, PR people to ask their parents, what do you do for a living? And we're going to get them all on video and put them out there.
Yeah.
And it's going to be hilarious. We already know, we've seen some of the videos.
Yeah.
Communications generally, marketing generally, there is a sort of lack of understanding of what it is all about, isn't there?
I mean, I think even in the room when you're in a brand meeting, you have multiple agencies. No one's really sure what agency is doing what, you know, because the lines used to be very, very clear, and now they're not. And as the world changes and people consume media in different ways, it's, you know, well, the way I would describe it today is far different than I would have described it 10 years ago. So that's definitely a thing. And I think, let's be honest, most executives, especially the higher up they go, the safer they want to play it on things as it pertains to public facing. And people are very, very conservative. I often say, you know, we talk about Steve Jobs being this visionary leader. Steve Jobs wouldn't get hired by one Fortune 500 company now at all. Nobody wants to be told they're wrong. Nobody wants to be told to think about it differently. They just want to continue to move things forward and stay under the radar in a lot of ways.
That's a good point. I was watching a couple of films from the 80s a few weeks ago. Blue Velvet, I think, was one of them. That would never get made now, would it? It just would not get made.
No way.
Anyway, the other thing is there were a couple of analysts in the UK who were suggesting WPP might get broken up,
right?
And that might even lead to all of the holding companies getting broken up.
Right.
I can't see that happening myself.
Look, my 2 cents on this is that there's a lot of speculation out there, and our excellent contributor Chris Daniels talked to a lot of people this week, and there's no one consensus about what's going to happen. I mean, there are smart people saying that it's going to get broken up. There are some people saying no, they're actually going to add some stuff. There are some people saying that they're going to go with an insider as CEO, so, and there are some people saying the opposite. So I think there's a lot of speculation out there right now, and he brings up a good point in the piece he wrote about it, which is that with most companies, the board and the CEO tend to be much more in lockstep than WPP were. So it's hard to make a prediction based on that of who they're going to go with.
Yeah, let's change the order, actually, because that brings us to holding company results.
Yeah.
You know, there's no doubt holding companies are challenged because you can't necessarily have an advertising line, a media line, a PR line, a digital line when they're all doing the same thing. You know, essentially, there's little tweaks here and there, but, you know, that's where someone like Kovert is winning, because you do it all in the same place, and you do it in a more nimble fashion. But the holding companies are challenged, and those results really proved that, didn't they?
Yeah.
Q1.
So getting into that, Omnicom's PR firms grew by 0.7% in the first quarter, so a little bit of a rebound from last year. But, you know...
0.3, didn't they, over the year?
Yeah.
No one's going to get overexcited about those numbers.
Right, and that's up against the first quarter of 2017, and when the revenue was up 1.8% last year. So, you know, nothing too big. And while that is happening, Publicis' net revenue for the holding company at large was up 1.6% for the first quarter. So again, positive, but nothing too big.
Yeah, nothing stunning. The agency business report's about to come out, and that sort of tallies with those numbers. Tough first three quarters of 17.
Yeah.
Better in Q4. A little bit more optimism in Q1, but it's still very, very cautiously optimistic at best. So
now we did see a difference between the two holding companies in terms of how they performed in North America, whereas Omnicom had a bad first quarter in North America, and Publicis had a good first quarter in North America. So that's interesting as well.
Yeah, America was especially challenged last year, but Publicis had some nice wins, some nice integrated wins. The Mercedes, well, I'm not sure that was in America so much, but yeah. Okay, let's pick up the pace because we're running out of time. Marion Salzman, interesting new job, Frank. Not one that you would maybe have predicted.
No. So she is going to a new role at Philip Morris. She is moving to Switzerland for the job, and she's going to be VP of Corporate Communications there. She is, of course, the longtime head of Havas PR in North America and Euro RSCG before that. Well known for predictions, new words.
Metrosexual.
Well, there's some dispute about who actually.
That
that's a highly disputed topic. And
as a metrosexual yourself,
unshaven, I might add.
Badly unshaven.
As am I.
Yes, Sir Martin would have a ball with this, wouldn't
he?
he?
No,
No.
he wouldn't be happy. She's going to enjoy the clean air of Switzerland, working for big tobacco
and no taxes.
Yes, and yes. So she says she was lured to the job by Philip Morris's promise of a tobacco-free future, and she is going to work on that.
Yeah, I can't add anything to that story. I just think we should let it set there, and people can draw their own.
Let's say it turned a few heads.
Yes, it did. Yeah.
Got some interesting emails after that one posted.
Going to Smith & Wesson to have a good future.
One leading CEO said to me, "This is crazy stuff." But anyway, good luck, Marion. She's great value and really always good to speak to and quote on the industry, and very smart insights. So yeah, who knows? Maybe it's an inspired move. McDonald's, they have a new approach to communications. Frank, what is it?
Okay, so they split the account since the start of this year that was previously almost all handled by Golan into storytelling handled by 3 agencies. So Golan gets to tell what they call the food story, which is about how it's using different kinds of ingredients, cage-free eggs, things like that. WE Communications is We Communications. I still think of them as Wagner Edstrom.
I know.
So, is talking more about their modernization, their new restaurants, things like that. And Purple Strategies, the more political public affairs firm, is talking about what it's doing for its people, its employees, scholarships, things like that. Yes.
Hence the name. Yeah, interesting to see how that emerges. Golan obviously associated with that brand for 60 years, still very associated with it, but they're opening up the work a little bit, aren't they? Obviously, and they have the interesting approach with Wendy Clark heading the agency support on the other side, having a different model, results-based model. Wetherspoons, Frank. I don't know if you've had the opportunity to go in a Wetherspoons pub.
I haven't had the pleasure.
It's a cultural experience that I definitely recommend.
I've been told it's my kind of place.
2 pints and a curry for $10.
Hot wings?
Well, you could get some hot wings, yeah.
All
you
right.
could get some pork pie or something like that, and nice cheap beer, flat beer, no heads, warm beer.
Sign me up.
Good British stuff, you know.
Sure, sure.
But they've all of life is there, by the way, in Wetherspoons, literally. But they've decided to go dark on social, basically, haven't they? They're just going to delete everything from all their social channels.
Yes, and they're saying that the employees that would be working on social media can be doing more productive things with their time, which makes me wonder what these folks were doing in the first place. But look, I think
there's a more productive thing to be doing than messing around on Facebook and Twitter.
Well, not if you're in charge of that, you would think. But anyway, I don't think it's the smartest idea ever. Social media is
But why are they
going
doing
away.
it? What's the justification?
So it sounds like they want to take more of a straightforward media relations strategy, and if they have something to say, they're going to talk to reporters, which, I appreciate, but it's not like social media is going away anytime soon, and it's there, and you got to play in the playground.
Yeah, what that means is the conversations that go on social are going to be dictated by the people who don't work for the brand. So,
Right. And from what you're saying, it sounds like Wetherspoons has some critics. So
you could... it's not the Walmart of English pubs, but you certainly see some interesting characters in there. So you see all these Walmart sites with photos of people in Walmarts. I could imagine a Wetherspoons site as well. I don't know. What do you think, Joe, as a strategy? I quite like it, actually.
Well, we're talking about it, and we're talking short-term strategy. It might work, and then I wonder about the clientele as you describe it. How active are they on Twitter? I don't know. So, look, I think there's probably a more balanced approach to take. I think some brands probably go too far down the line. I don't know necessarily from a consumer standpoint, like why you would follow certain brands in certain categories. But it's a curious approach for sure. The social media thing is a necessity. It's part of our life. I think some of it gets a little bit too far out ahead. When I saw yesterday that there's AI computer-generated influencers getting paid on Instagram, I lose my mind. I don't know what to do with that. And then there's like two computer Instagram accounts fighting with each other, and there's no human involved.
Do you represent any pets?
No.
No, because there are agents who just represent
no, we do not.
pet influencers. We did a whole issue on them actually. So
God help us.
We're guilty. Yeah, it's interesting. Anyway, I see where they're coming from, and I think it's an interesting approach. But yeah, all right. Listen, Joe, thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
Great to chat to you.
Thank you.
Frank, always a pleasure. Couple of customer service announcements before we go. 2 weeks today, it's the Brand Film Festival, as mentioned earlier, so really would love to see as many of you as possible at the Paley Media Centre in the evening, and there's some workshops in the afternoon where we're going to go beneath the weeds on brand films, case studies, etc. Jay Goodman, the chair of jury from CAA, is it's called Observatory now, so I should call his agency by the right name. He's going to be joining us, and as are many other luminaries. We've got our Global Awards in London on May the 15th, and they're set to be special, so do get your tickets for that. If you want to put in a submission for the 40 under 40 list, or you want to nominate someone, you've got until April the 25th, so you've got about another week to do that. That's the first deadline. You can still get them in until May the 2nd, the final late deadline. But yeah, make sure you get your best talent submitted to that. And we have a PR and Communications Bellwether survey, which we've launched into the market. We're doing this with Boston University, and it's going to be the definitive survey of the PR market as PRWeek turns 20, which we do this year. So we're going to launch some initial findings from that at Cannes, at the Festival of Creativity, and then in the fall in our coverage around the 20th anniversary. So do take that. Go to the website or look in the breakfast briefing. There's a link to the survey, and we want as many people as possible to do that. But that's it. That's all we got time for. We'll see you next time on the PR Week.